There it goes. Great.
All right, awesome. So getting started with Helix, the first thing you'll want to do is make sure that your system meets certain requirements and that you install a few dependencies. The first is that you need a compiler that supports the subset of C++14 implemented by GCC 4.9.3. So GCC 4.9.3 or newer, Clang 3.6 or newer, and Visual Studio 2015 or newer will all work and are used to build Helix regularly and test it. And you also want CMake 3.4 minimum or newer, although 3.10 or newer is recommended. Might want Git, depending on how you prefer to acquire a copy of the source code. You also want Boost 1.58 or newer to build the core Helix library, although Boost 1.61 or newer is needed for running the tests. And Helix is built with newer version of, Helix is built with a newer version of Boost much more regularly than 1.58. If you need 0MQ support, then you'll need 0MQ4 or newer. And if you need MPI support, you'll want an MPI library installed in SEP on your system, like OpenMPI, MBAPICH, or MSMPI version 8 for Windows. For installing Boost, you'll need to install the program options, file system, test, and date time libraries. Compiling Boost from source works on all supported systems, and there are a few scripts in the scripts folder of the Helix repository that you might find useful if you choose that option. If you're on Linux, then Ubuntu and many other distributions, you can just use your preferred package manager to do something like apt-get install libboostdev. On Red Hat Enterprise Linux, you'll want to compile from source to avoid issues with the package they provide for Boost. On Mac OS X, you can use Homebrew and just brew install Boost. For Windows, things are a little bit tricky at times. If you're using Visual Studio 2017, you want to make sure you use Boost 1.65.1 until CMake 3.11 comes out. And on Windows, you'll want to make sure you use CMake 3.10 minimum to avoid problems. To have CMake automatically detect where Boost is, you can install it to either the root of your C or D drive, or set the Boost root environment variable to the install location of Boost. And there's a link for a binary installer of Boost. 14.0 is one you want to download for Visual Studio 2015, 14.1 for Visual Studio 2017, and you'll want to make sure you download the right 32 or 64-bit version depending on what you're trying to build your application with. For installing 0MQ, again, you can just use your package manager or whatever Linux distro you have, like apt-get on Ubuntu. For OS X, you can do brew install 0MQ. For Windows, you do not want to use the installer that they provide since it's very outdated and won't work at all. You can either build a more recent copy from source, like check out a copy of 0MQ repository and build it, or use the auto build 0MQ option and set it to on when configuring Helix with CMake. And that's probably the easiest way to get 0MQ working on Windows. Another CMake option you might be interested in is GMQ use static library, which will force auto-building 0MQ on any of the supported operating systems and then link to 0MQ as a static library instead of using the shared 0MQ libraries on your system. After you've installed all the dependencies, then you can check out a copy of Helix using Git or download an archive in zip or tar format from GitHub. The master branch is for the tagged releases, and the develop branch is approved future changes that we'll be making into an upcoming tagged release. On Linux or Mac systems, you can just go into the Helix source code directory in your shell and then make a build directory, go to it, and then run CMake, and then CMake if you want to change the install path or any other config options for your Helix build. and then run make and make install. On Windows, you can configure everything with the CMake GUI, then open the project it generates in Visual Studio and build the solution. Some options that you might find useful with CMake are the build C shared lib option to build Helix as a shared library. So then that enables support for a C interface. Default for this option is on. The build Helix examples option will compile all the examples, and the build Helix tests option will compile the tests. If you're trying to build with the version of Boost prior to 1.61, then you'll want to turn build Helix tests off to avoid errors. And then if you want to enable other bindings, you'll want to install a copy of Swig on your system, and then enable the build option for whichever binding you want created. So build Java for the Java bindings, build Python for the Python bindings, or build MATLAB for MATLAB bindings. And for the MATLAB bindings, you'll also want to turn the use boost stag libs option to on in order to avoid conflicts with the version of Boost that MATLAB uses internally. If you have like Boost or ZeroMQ installed in like a custom location or something special going on in your system, then there's a Boost root option that you can set to the install folder for Boost if CMake doesn't find it automatically. And there's also ZeroMQ include path and ZeroMQ library path options in case CMake isn't able to find the location for ZeroMQ automatically. Enable CXX17 will turn on the C++ compiler flag for you. Then if you want to change the install location for Helix, you can use CMake install prefix and set it to the path you want Helix installed to. The Helix generate doxygen doc option will, when turned on, will create a .doxy file and then a make target for running doxygen and generating documentation from the Helix source code. And then if you're on a Mac, you can use Homebrew to take care of installing all of the dependencies for Helix and building Helix. You can just run brew tap gmlc-tdc-helix and then brew install Helix, and it'll take care of everything for you. If you then want to enable Python 2 or 3 support with Helix, you can run brew reinstall Helix and give it the with Python argument and with Python include dir argument, pointing to the location of the Python headers for whichever version of Python you want support for. And that. Any questions?